Yeah, no. Of course, they'll never know. Yeah. It aborted just 1.3 seconds before launch? Perfect. Before you know it, the stocks will be tumbling and our private rocket company will be the only rocket company in the contiguous 48 states. Hello, and welcome to Office Hours, the live portion of the facility where good old Professor Kyle opens up his blast doors to you, the nerdy staff and population outside of these walls, and we can talk about any old science, pop culture thing, and today I hope we can laugh, live, learn, some other L word for alliteration. So, as we are wont to do on Office Hours, we're going to be going through a number of topics that interested me during the week and last week, since I was off last week, and we'll be taking all of your comments, questions, and simping for science. What is simping for science? Well, if you want to join the facility, if you want to support the facility, that's patreon.com/Kyle Hill, or you can go into the chat on YouTube, use the super chat, and I'll do my very best to read all of those beefed up messages as quickly and as promptly as I possibly can. Today, we'll be going through a number of topics, of course, as we are always doing. We'll be talking about some cyberpunk science, which is more or less whatever you want to know about it. There's no spoilers. How could there be? We'll be also talking about one of your comments from the latest episode of the facility. We'll be talking about candles, and we'll also be talking about this spoon guy. Why? Well, we're going to find out soon. But, so, as an example of simping for science, of course, our first comes from always big supporter of the facility, Elizabeth Calvert, who says, "Hey, Kyle, what are the 4 known dimensions? My tiny human doesn't believe time is a dimension." But it is, though. See, the problem with... So there's 3 spatial dimensions, X, Y, and Z. You can move, side to side, forward and back, up and down. But could you actually move in those dimensions if time didn't progress? There would be no actual movement through 3-dimensional space. And because we can move, or you'd be forever a single point. And if it's that single point in a 3-dimensional matrix, if that single point in some volume never moved, then it would be as though time doesn't exist for that point. It's just that point eternal. But if we were to look at an object moving through space, if it was moving through space, that implies that it has to be changing its position across another dimension, and that dimension is time. We have another 5 from Sovereign, who says, "Glad to catch one of these, simp for science and Kyle." That brings up very good thing. Very good point. I have it written down here. As I said last week or 2 weeks ago, the month of December, all your simping for science, because we here at the facility are being charitable this holiday season. This month, all your simps for science will be going towards the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation. And that includes a lot of very valuable charities like First Robotics and everything that Grant and his family would want to support. So I would have put a fundraiser in this YouTube description, but it is still applying for nonprofit status because the nonprofit or the foundation was set up, unfortunately, very quickly. So I'm just saying that at the end of the month, we will be cutting a facility check for the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation, and all these simps are going straight toward it this month. Wyman says, "How close do you think your boy Musk is on delivering with Neuralink?" Very, very far away. You can start reading signals and putting signals into the brain, but until that becomes something where it can actually change behavior or, read brain data, it's going to be very far away. Random Good Game with the Australian $6. "Long-time lurker, first live stream. Hi, Basilisk... Hi, show, Basilisk Love Monkey. Wait, how does it go again?" That last part wasn't very good. And we could probably stop praising the Basilisk for a little bit, because now I'm praising the Demon Core, because it's doing very well. And I hope y'all enjoyed that little mini documentary series that we started doing. I'm going to continue it. It's going to be all about nuclear accidents and mistakes, and I think I'm going to call it the Half-Life Histories with your boy here. Mixmaster with the 10 says, "Kyle Senpai, please notice me. I go ooh for science." So, science in Cyberpunk 2077. I want to open this up to the chat right now because there's a number of things that we can talk about in regards to Cyberpunk and science. But on the face of it, Cyberpunk is about transhumanism. It's about human augmentation, transformations to society and the economy. And human augmentation is something that people have been thinking about and fantasizing about and making stories about for a long, long time. There's even now, even though we're nowhere near the Cyberpunk 2077 levels of human augmentation, I mean, if you think about it, we have a lot of low-grade human augmentation right now, from artificial limbs that aren't, cyberpunk level, but even go one step below that. I mean, glasses are a way to augment human biology with technology, and it doesn't feel like it is because it's not, your glasses don't go, but it is technically a human augmentation, right? Null with the 5 says, happy to sim for science. I truly believe that knowledge deserves to be shared. You do an amazing job at making learning interesting. Thank you so much. Sim for science, say no more. The local bones chapters with the 20. Corinne Firelight, a longtime facility supporter, says pacemakers are a way to augment human biology as our medical implants. We're just not really to the cyberpunk level of things yet. And during this little segment, we here at the facility, we're planning something pretty cool for Cyberpunk. We did a big, maybe we just go. Yeah. Look around you, samurai. We here at the facility will be going quite all out for Cyberpunk, and I wanted to. Should I give you a little hint about what we did? Should I do it? I'll show a very brief hint. All right, I'll show you a very brief hint about what we did. It's just going to be a simple image. All right, here we go. Can you guess what I done did? It's it's pretty good. It's pretty good what we came up with. So we're still working on that right now. The episode's hopefully gonna drop on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Welcome to Night City. And yes, there's no spoilers for Cyberpunk because I have not played it. I have pre-downloaded it, or I've pre-ordered it, waiting to download it. So I haven't even played the game. Vibe by Zero with the 50 says, hey Kyle, just want to say thank you for all the content you've put out. It has inspired me to do more and learn so much more. Thank you from Denmark. Well, thank you from the streets of Night City. As you can see, it says Night City right back there. So you know that I'm actually here. A lot of people guessing. Ooh, Big Ol' Moose says murder. Something Guy says wood. These are all bad guesses. Grin Reaper of Troll says, is that a belt sword? Escape Radiation says the glowing katana. People saying sharp ruler, mantis blades. High discount Chris Hemsworth. How dare you? But let's get back to some cyberpunkian science, right? So there is a lot that we've done so far that could be argued is base level human augmentation. To do much more of that, or to get to cyberpunk level. Yeah, so Kelvin with the 5 says, is 2077 a realistic time frame that human augmentation can be up to cyberpunk level? Hashtag a stabby stabby. So 2077 is 57 years from now, right? Will we be at a point technologically that we will be able to fully replace a human limb? That's incredibly hard to say. Just think of how hard it is to replace an organ without a body rejecting it, and how complicated it is, how long the wait times are. But what at least there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel there when you have something like an implant that's like titanium, because it's completely unreactive with biological material. It can stay in your body without being fully rejected. So there's a ray of hope there, I think. But there's a more interesting question when it comes to human augmentation for me, is that I like to ask the question, okay, well, if you could replace a limb, say your non-dominant arm, with an arm that was as good or better, but it's completely synthetic, and it will come along with any potential side effects or downsides, would you do it? And once you start extending that line of reasoning, you can start doing this kind of like ship of Theseus kind of thing where, oh, well, would you replace a leg, you know, your eyes, your scalp, something like that, and then you get to, you start to question, okay, where would I stop? Would I become fully robotic? Would I upload my body to a machine, or my consciousness to a machine, rather? And I think everyone has different points at which they would stop. And that's interesting to me. The Monolith with the New Zealand 5 says, Simp for Grant, do you listen to the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe? Figured you might. Yes, I'm very good friends with Cara Santa Maria. She's one of my close friends. And I used to listen to the podcast when I was first starting to get into science communication. I don't listen anymore. But I've met all the guys. They're all very nice. And we've been to some of the same conferences. And yeah, very, very familiar with their work. The Local Bones chapter with a good point says, if you are fully robotic, are you still you? Well, that's what I'm getting at, right? What makes a person a person? At some point, well, how much of you do I have to replace before you don't consider yourself anymore? And most of us feel like we're something that's behind our eyes. You don't really identify you as a person with, you know, the shape of your feet, or, you know, the number of fingers you have, or your arm. We feel like we are a subject viewing an object from behind our eyes. The locus of consciousness is, you know, behind our eyes, inside of our head. That's where we would locate it. So what if you could replace your head or your skull? If you could fully replace your skull, would that feel better than uploading your brain into something? I don't have answers to this. It's just interesting. I want to know, like, just take a moment to think to yourself, where would you stop? Or would you go forward at all? Yeah, Ben Blythe says, oh, the wreck ship philosophy question. Yeah, it's called the Ship of Theseus, if you're interested, where basically this was a conundrum, a philosophical conundrum where, okay, let's say we had a ship and it was getting into disrepair, and we start replacing it board by board with the same exact boards, just new. At what point is the ship a new ship? Is it the same ship? If I took the ship apart piece by piece, put it all back together with identical but new parts, is it the same ship? Now there's kind of a secondary part to that. Well, maybe it's not the ship, maybe it's the captain that's important. Does it have the same captain? And then we get to this, again, cyberpunky question where, well, if you still had your consciousness but your body was fully synthetic, are you still you? If you want to know my thinking on this, you know, I'm a reductionist in that everything that you are is your consciousness, and we know this for a fact because, you know, I could open you up for brain surgery and poke a specific part of your brain in theory, and you would forget how to speak your language, or you'd suddenly become a raging alcoholic, or, you know, I'm being facetious here, of course, but everything about you, your mind is what the brain does. And so if I was able to fully swap my body out with synthetic parts that were functionally identical, then I believe I would be the same person. Because how could you not be if everything was exactly identical? And if you're not the same, then you're imbuing the material itself with some sort of immaterial essence-ness, which I don't see any good evidence for. What do I know? Deus Ex deals a lot with this. Yes. Yes. It's the whole point. Actually. Samat Sane says, I am bored. All right. Cool guy. Why don't we go on to our first real segment then? Sports fan? Who's this man? Who's this man? Well, I'll have you know that this man, which I did not know, this man is the reason why I could not have my favorite Pokemon card growing up. So I grew up, well, at the time Pokemon, the trading card game, was released, I was living overseas, and my favorite Pokemon from Pokemon Red, because it absolutely wrecked once you got it, was Kadabra. And I like Kadabra a lot. I even stole a Pokemon Kadabra card from another kid in school. That's how much I liked it. Did I ever atone for that sin? No. And he'll never find out. But favorite Pokemon was Kadabra. And I didn't know this because I stopped playing, but for the last 20 years, there have been 0 Kadabra cards printed for the Pokemon trading card game. Why? This dude. This guy, his name is Uri Geller. If you're a little bit older than me, if you're, you probably have heard the name, but if you're a little bit younger or my age, this guy became very, very famous for claiming telekinetic powers, powers of the mind that would allow him to change physical objects. And the most famous demonstration of this was his spoon bending. And he got so good at spoon bending and spoon bending publicly, like he was on the Johnny Carson show and stuff, he became synonymous with spoon bending, and he made it kind of a thing that was popular, and everyone knew who this guy was. Because he was so synonymous with spoon bending, when Pokemon came out and started printing Kadabra cards, and this was news to me. Of course, Kadabra looked like this. And so you see a similarity here. Now, of course, this guy could just be, you know, hey, he's also doing spoon bending stuff with his mind because that's a physics type, psychic type Pokemon. And it's so good against everything. I get it. It's obviously about me. But to be fair, some of the Japanese translations of Kadabra, well, some of the kanji Japanese translations of Kadabra was literally Yun Geller. Like Youngeler. And this guy's name is Uri Geller. And the Pokemon bend spoons. So he has a case there, right? Obviously, he looks nothing like that. Well, he kind of does. But it was saying it was trading in on his image and what he's famous for. And so for the last 20 years, there's been no Kadabra cards printed. Until 2 weeks ago, when Uri Geller said he would drop the claim against the Pokemon trading card game, and that now Kadabra can be printed. And it was in the news, and people were like, oh, thank you, that's great. This guy sucks. This guy, and Uri Geller has spent his entire life trying to trick people into thinking he has telekinetic powers. And as some of you are saying in the chat, someone who had fought his whole life to debunk this guy is a guy named James Randi, and I used to work for James Randi, and he passed recently this year. And James Randi debunked a lot of, you know, psychics and mediums and people who claimed they had telekinetic powers and stuff. He even offered Uri Geller $1 million if in a laboratory controlled double-blind setting he could replicate the same thing. He never got $1 million. But so James Randi spent a long time doing this, and he's done many exposés on the man. He even said, after he died this year, people were asking what to do with his ashes, and he had apparently told a close friend, well, when I die, cremate me and then throw my ashes in the eyes of Uri Geller. So he didn't like the man. But what spoonbending is when you don't know what's going on, yes, it is kind of cool, but it is just it's just simple it's simple directions of attention, as so much of magic is, where when you're not looking, they do a quick firm bend in the spoon and then they continue to do it, or they get up from a chair, or they drop the spoon on accident, they go to pick it up, they bend it on the chair, the foot of the chair, and then they come back up, oh, sorry, oh, look at this. Or they have pre-bent spoons, or, I've seen a show, or I saw a challenge that James Randi had where it's like, I'm going to come on this show and I'm going to bend all these spoons. I'm Uri Geller. And then James Randi came out and he's like, that sounds great. I have, and I want to see that. I have switched all of the spoons that you have brought with spoons that I have brought. And they're normal spoons. Go ahead. And on that night, Uri is like, oh, I can't feel the energy today. It's just not there. Was it not? So this guy has spent his, are you going to fulfill his wish? I mean, that would be great. But this guy has spent his life, and he knows he doesn't have psychic powers. He's spent his life trying to trick people, making a lot of money off of people, giving people the false impression that telekinetic powers exist and that he's some wunderkind or something like that. So this guy sucks. Thank you for letting us get Kadabra cards back. But, you suck. And I know it sounds like I'm being harsh here. Don't gift that last part. I know it sounds like I'm being harsh here, but like literally trading in on superstition, misinformation, trying to fool you. He's a con man. And that's my least favorite Pokemon. Jeez. Yeah, it looked like the Void for a second. Yeah, a lot of people saying, so like spoon bending, like why it's in a movie like The Matrix is because of the popularity of that guy. Wunderkind. Dwight K. Schrute says, whoever believes in telekinesis, please raise my right hand. That's pretty good. Which I like. Oh, my shirt says, it's never aliens. Because it's not ever aliens. Oh, yeah. So, if it would be very easy to prove that telekinesis exists. And of course, no one has ever done so. And Cody Nesbitt with the 5 says, is it possible for science to prove or disprove religions? Also, you always get my name so close. It sounds like Nesbitt. Keep up the good work. Well, Cody Nesbitt, I am not going to get anywhere near your question. For obvious reasons. This is a science show. John F. with the $99.99 donation to the Grant Imahara STEM Foundation. Con artists are horrible people. How can we teach proper skepticism in early education? Well, that's a good question. The problem is that, like, critical thinking is not taught. And I know that sounds like something a science person would just say, but you could come up with a critical thinking course. You really could. And skeptics, organized skepticism has done this for a long time, but you could come up with a course that is focused on, you have a syllabus where you teach kids how to identify bad information versus good information. This is how to read a scientific study. These are, motivations behind various people and things. What is more likely? What is Occam's razor? All these things. You could teach a course in critical thinking, and that would go a long way in inoculating a lot of people against the kind of nonsense that Uri Geller peddles. Ed Bangor with a 5 says, Shohei Kyle the Love. Cochlear implants can directly stimulate the auditory nerve with electricity, so we might be closer in 2077 than we think. I agree. Cochlear implants are pretty close. Going straight into the brain to augment your perception is dang cool. Grin Reaper of Trolls with the 19 says, yes, magic is misdirection. Overwhelm your opponent with too many things to keep track of and confuse them to the point where they miss triggers. Now, let me be clear. I have nothing against magic. I've been to the Magic Castle many times. I love watching magic. My uncle is a magician. Magic is cool, but I appreciate it for what it is. I appreciate that these men and women are so good at knowing how your mind works that they can perfectly misdirect your attention by using human psychological foibles. Like, that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of, like, that's why magicians and neuroscientists have become so aligned in recent years and have even done studies together, is because they know how the mind works implicitly just from doing magic. And I think that's awesome. Tim with a 30, blah, 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 is fine, says, you've said law of large numbers a lot in the past. Can you go into what it really means, simp for science? Well, when I say, Tim, blah, 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 when I say law of large numbers, it's, I mean, the human mind has a very hard time dealing with large, assigning proper value to large numbers. Especially when you have small percentages of giant numbers. But my point being is that you put less emotional salience on a giant number than you do for a small number. And for example, when you hear about, you know, for example, Grant Imahara passing away this year, that is very emotionally salient to a lot of people. I cried. It was terrible. But as one person, it's easier to connect with that number. But when I say, you know, 1.7 million people died as a result of the Indonesian tsunamis a couple years back, you're not immediately as sad. It's almost, it's harder to care. And so, especially for things like COVID and the pandemic, when you say like 200,000 people have died or whatever, it's like, but when you hear about, you know, someone my age having multiple heart attacks after just getting married and then dying alone in a hospital room and then having to have a Zoom funeral, it's a little bit worse. I can't pronounce your name, but 50 from Switzerland, hashtag simp for Grant. Oh, that's Tam. Hey, Tam. Tam from the facility, one of my most chatty professors in our Discord, Jared Kraft, with the 10, who says, going back to the Half-Life Histories idea, you should really cover the Hanford site in Washington. It's a really good example of what atomic waste management gone wrong looks like. Awesome. Well, I will look into that. I will say that I already have my next Half-Life Histories mini documentary shot, and that will be releasing pretty soon. And then I have a third one that I've just started researching. So I want to do that much more, especially because the Demon Core did like 2 million views in like 2 weeks. That's pretty good for me. I'm no Veritasium. But I'm going to be going over to his house pretty soon. And I'll slap him. Hey, how you do so good? Random good game with the Australian $69. Simp for Grant. My favorite teachers in school were always the ones that encouraged us to question everything, including what we were taught. Yeah, question everything to a point. A good skeptic's phrase that you might hear a lot if you're in those kind of circles. Keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. Believing people like Uri Geller, your mind is open, but it's too open, and then it's like, oh, that's nonsense. Give people a bar. It's totally fine to have a bar that someone must jump over by convincing you before you believe something. That's a common tactic for the pseudoscientist, where they say, well, how do you know? You can't prove that I'm wrong. That's just what organized science would say. It's like, nah, I have a bar where if you can get above that, I start considering that thing to be real or true. But if it's below that, if you have zero evidence, why do I have to even... Why are we still talking? Who are you? Get out. Let's pause the super chats for just a second as we move on to our next topic, or else that guy who said he was bored last time is going to get bored. And I can't have that. That would be so embarrassing for him. Peer review. So, as we're wont to do at the facility, each week I go through comments, questions from the last week's episode at the facility, and then I highlight some comment or question or correction that made me go, or wow, or hey. This week's example made me go, wow. And as always, if you are selected for peer review and you defend your thesis, not only do you get a plaque from Kevin, yep, we got a plaque this time, you also get an honorary month's membership to the facility, and all you have to do is figure out how to message me about that. So far, no one has done it. That's on you. But this week is coming from Who Dat, and Who Dat was commenting on the Demon Core, the True Story of the Demon Core episode, which, if you haven't watched it, please go watch it. I was trying a new format for the first time, and I'm very, very happy with how it came out. Who Dat says, now I could be wrong, but I work with radiation every day. In the picture you showed, about 10 minutes in, I think his calculations to how much radiation was emitted are labeled as the number 528 and so on. He is in the corner closest to him at 17.2 R. So this is talking about a diagram that showed where Louis Slotin was standing in the room when he let the Demon Core go critical through an accident. And he told all the scientists to hold their place, mark down on the floor in chalk where they were so that he could calculate, based on the distance from the Demon Core, how much radiation they had just received. And where it looks like Louis Slotin was, had a 17.2 R. Who Dat goes on to say, R is for Rentgen. Rentgens are a measurement of radiation. To put into perspective, people who work with radiation are not legally allowed to pick up more than 5 Rentgens per year. The fact that this core emitted 17 Rentgens at 8 feet away in a fraction of a second is absolutely mind-boggling to me. And I say this in the episode too, he received a year's worth of radiation. He received, what, over 3 years worth of legally allowable radiation in a fraction of a second. And he died a few days later. At the time, and there's some other accidents that get up there, but at the time, Louis Slotin is thought to have received one of the largest doses any human has ever taken, ever. Like, hundreds of times more radiation than was at ground zero of Hiroshima. So these accidents are tragic, and they're so fascinating to me. The hubris involved, the brilliance, the raw power of nuclear energy. It's all fascinating to me. So we'll be continuing this Half-Life Histories series. And coming up next is another one from an adapted essay that I wrote a couple years ago, but it was right there, and I wanted to give this treatment to it. And then after that, we'll be going through another one that I'm quite excited about. But what I'm excited about right now is that Who Dat is now an honorary member of the facility. Fantastic. Fantastic. Plaque me. Come on. No, it's fine. No, was he behind your back or something? Come on. Okay. What? We'll be right back after these commercial messages. Is that what they say? Okay. Premiering this Saturday on Nickelodeon, it's
Hey guys, it's Kyle the Sci-File! Everyone wants to learn about physics today, right? Yeah! Well, good, that's great, because today we'll be covering nuclear criticality accidents. That's right, severe radiation poisoning, your skin falling off, vomiting until your organs fail. It's gonna be fantastic!
premiering this Saturday, the cartoon event of the year, Kyle the Sci-File. Oh, you're not gonna want to miss it.
It's gonna be fun! And deadly!
I don't know about that, what I just did. Whew. What the F is this? Jeremy thought it was his sleep paralysis demon. If you see me at the edge of your bed in the middle of the night, it's not a demon. It's me. You're playing games with your shirt. It keeps flipping sides. How do you know I'm not just taking off a shirt and putting on a different shirt? This is a high quality stream. People saying voiceover was on point. Comp West says, I will stop in the nose job I have already done. That's as cyberpunk as I'm willing to go. Oh, so augmenting your face. Have you ever... Okay, I don't recommend you look this up. But have you ever seen what a nose job looks like surgically? Like what they have to do to like go in and change the shape of your nose? Don't look it up. It's so much more violent than you think it is. Wow. 2 words. Bone chisels. Yeah. Don't look it up. Rowdy Fox says, who hasn't dreamt of having Kyle at the edge of their bed? Stop it. Who am I? Pokimane? I don't need simps like that. I need simps for science. Yes. Don't search for that footage. No. I said don't. Everybody. H. Wilson says, would you augment? Yeah, I think I would. I think if you could promise me a fully functioning, if not better functioning limb, I would do it. I think. Yeah. And I did a Twitter poll not too long ago, and like 70% of people agreed with me. But also they follow me, so there might be kind of self-selection there, but... Soda Pop says, are you going to play Cyberpunk 2077? Yep, it's already downloaded on my machine. I still have not gotten a PS5 yet because I waited too long, and now it's sold out everywhere. But I do have it ready to go, and I'll start loading it up tomorrow. And then stay tuned because we have a giant Cyberpunk 2077 video coming out where I worked with my femme fatale, my own personal razor girl, Thea, and we made something that ballistics gel bones did not stand up to. Well, I mean, the skull did okay, but not when I really went for it. Do you know that they sell ballistics gel heads that have brains and a lot of blood in them? I didn't. That was a surprise, and you'll see my surprise. Argo says, did you change your channel name from Vsauce 3? I do not sound like Jake. We sound similar. We look totally different. And I got him voted out when we played Among Us for charity last week. Because I saw him. I saw what he did. And he tried. Doesn't work on me. Doesn't work on me, Jake. Alexander F says, everyone who wears glasses is augmented. Yeah, I know. We said that at the beginning. Patrick Wilson with the Australian $5. Simp for science, do you think Thor's hammer would have gravitational lensing? So my idea with how Thor's hammer worked was that even though we haven't discovered these particles yet, the most forces have some kind of particle that modulates, that transmits the information of that. And the theorized transmitter of gravity force is the graviton. So my idea was that Thor's hammer emitted gravitons to become more massive, or way more. And so if it did way more, it's not increasing in kilograms, but if it did way more, if it weighed enough, then it could do some gravitational lensing. But at that point, I don't think you can get anywhere near it. If something that small was lensing the light around it, I think you'd be instantly pulled into it and flattened into a single atom high sheet of blood goo. Blake MacArthur says, do you know why chainsaws were invented? Another thing not to search for. No, I don't. Is it for cutting people's limbs off? I bet it is. I mean, there's a bone saw. The chainsaw is the natural evolution of that. You know? But I'm guessing. I'm not going to look it up. John Doe, who is a picture of Doe, says, you're totally right. Uri Geller is way out there and totally unbelievable. Chris Angel, on the other hand, Chris Angel is the human manifestation of Vegas. He looks like Vegas. Do you know what I mean? He's good. He's quite good. But his whole spiel. I grow weary of spiels like that. William Jenkins, the 5 says, my local public network used to show live surgeries at midnight. It was a shocker when flipping channels. Why? Is that legal? Kristen, with the Canadian $9, or wherever that's from. Could the effects of radiation poisoning, particularly the DNA damage, be mitigated through gene therapy and the introduction of healthy DNA into cells? Funny you should say something like that, Kristen. Your body does have natural ways of repairing damage from radiation. It had to, because we're constantly being bombarded by radiation from the sun and from cosmic sources. So many organisms do have natural repair mechanisms for their DNA, and so do we. It's just that when radiation levels get high enough, it's too much. You talk about gene therapy. There is a gene, I forget the name now, that the tardigrade has that makes it much, much, much more resistant. I think it's called DSUP, a damage suppressant protein or gene, I forget. Anyway, the tardigrade has it, and it's much, much, much more resistant to X-ray radiation. So there's stuff that you could do with DNA, with the body, to make it more resistant naturally, which would be kind of cool. Hannah Miller with the 20 says, going back to Cyberpunk, I work in physical therapy and treat people with prosthetic devices, implants, etc. Those patients love exploring the science. Yeah, I say yeah, like I know. I don't know. Let's pause the super chats for a second so we can get to our last topic. But yeah, I guess when you have a very important surgery or something like that, you could get drawn into what's actually going on. I guess it takes a certain kind of person. When I go into the doctor, I love asking questions. And my doctor, my general practitioner guy, he's so nice and so knowledgeable, and he'll go through the science with me and tell me little things and factoids and stuff. And, he's like, hey, I'm like, oh, do you mean pharmacokinetics? And he's like, oh, yes, it's very good, Kyle. That is how this medicine, he's a great guy. So I love having teachers in all walks of life. So let's get to our last topic, which is something. Candles. Hey, why are you talking about candles, Kyle? Well, A, I have cats and I need candles. You know what I mean. And B, there's something very interesting. Well, there's a lot of tangential things happening around this pandemic that are objectively interesting to me. I mean, a lot of it is terrible, the economic situation, the death and the destruction, the tragedy, and the protests. Ugh. But there is interesting science still to be found here. For example, one researcher / scientist on Twitter had a very interesting thought. Her name is Kate Petrova on Twitter. And what she was thinking about, after being able to glean a lot of data from Amazon purchases and Amazon reviews, specifically thousands and thousands, some of you are ahead of me, it's about scented candles. And because one of the lingering effects of COVID-19 is a loss of sense of taste and smell, and this can last even after you have it, think about how bad that is. Even if, if you escape, the worst part of it, and you still like, oh, well, now I can't taste food right. But she had an idea. Well, would that change people's perception of candles if they weren't aware of this symptom and this lingering side effect? So here's what she found. So what she did is she took the top 3 scented and unscented candles from Amazon and got a couple thousand of them, 11,000 and 1,000 respectively, over 3 years, and she charted the average rating. Now, if her hypothesis is correct, that people wouldn't be noticing COVID-19, this symptom, if her hypothesis was correct, then right about the time that people started getting COVID-19, there might be people putting bad reviews and ratings on scented candles because they perceive that they don't smell as good or they can't smell them at all. And they say, oh, this scented candle sucks. And they give it a 1 star. So if you look at the top, that's the unscented candle. And so again, if the hypothesis were true, and this is our control group, then we would see no real difference in the data after that red dotted line at the top there. And it looks more or less consistent. Little bit of a dip. But now look at the top 3 scented candles. Look right at the start of the first reported COVID-19 cases. You do, in comparison to the control group, see an actual deflection, that people start rating the same scented candles, the same top 3 scented candles, as worse. Now, how do we go further in this data? What Kate also did was look at the proportion of reviews mentioning a lack of scent specifically. So we're trying to think like scientists here. This data that I'm pointing to right now doesn't immediately mean lack of scent is the problem, right? It could be anything. They could start, maybe they changed the wax and people didn't like it or whatever. So she wanted to control for variables, and she looked at, how many people are specifically saying, I can't smell this. It must suck. Here is March, June. And as you can see, right at the end there, where people might start buying more candles for Halloween and Christmas, that the proportion goes way up. Now, again, COVID is terrible, and it's done a lot of harm to society. But thinking like this was a wonderful isolated example of a scientist and a researcher digging into publicly available data to see if they can tease any signal out of the noise, and to find something. While it might not be a large effect, it might not be a real effect at all, finding something like this is really, really fascinating to me. And I think it's a great example of asking good scientific questions and then trying to see what the answer those questions are. Agreement, you get it. John Washburn says, Halloween candles? That's the first time I'm hearing of that. What? A, candles can be spooky in the right arrangement. B, jack-o'-lanterns, my dude. C, yeah, Halloween Where you from? A candleless wasteland? Robert Jelf says, why is there a huge spike of 5-star reviews and nearly no lower ratings in the scented right at the start and then slightly precede? I don't know. That could be anything. You'd have to investigate. You'd have to investigate it. James Ping with the 5 says, I asked this before, but I got lost in the scroll. I'm sorry. I try to get to as many soupy soups as I possibly can. Remember, all of your super chats on YouTube are going to the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation at the end of the year, where you, me, the facility staff, my security team, we will all be cutting a check and supporting science at the local level. Kids. And that's good. Anyway, James says, do you think traditional firearms could be replaced by small railguns? like the Gauss rifle? The real the reason you can have like a handgun that's small, and sometimes really small, is because the energy density of something like black powder is great, right? By which I mean you can get a lot of joules of energy out of not a lot of mass. So when you light black powder, you don't need a lot of it for it to do pretty well. And you don't need a lot of grains of black powder to make a few grams of bullet go very, very fast and very, very far. Energy density is the same reason why it's hard to beat gasoline right now, because there's so much energy in 1 gallon of gasoline. It's hard to replace that with something like batteries, because batteries take up a lot of space to get an equivalent amount of energy. They're not as energy dense. Now back to guns. Same problem. What would power a Gauss rifle? Likely batteries, because it relies on the electromotive force to fling metal at extreme high speeds with magnets, electromagnets turning on and off in sequence. That's going to be powered by electromagnets. Electricity, which needs batteries. So if you need a large battery to have the equivalent firepower of, say, a handgun, then you cannot make that Gauss rifle as small. And so it would be much harder to replace, as you say, traditional firearms, smaller firearms. You can replace much larger firearms like frickin' cannons, you know, on a battleship. Because at the scale, you can start to, it starts to make sense. Kevin, a railgun that's 1 kilometer long on a railway, like the Germans did in World War II. You can take a giant railgun. It could be huge, and you can move it anywhere that trains can go, and then ignore that. That wasn't super villainy. But so the problem is with electric weapons replacing traditional weapons is that they're going to be big and bulky and unwieldy until battery technology gets really, really good. Grin Reaper of Trolls, the $4.99 says, we use Halloween candles so we can smell fear. The fear. Oh, he's jumping around like a spider. Oh, the fear. Eric Almeida says, Kyle, I'm finally graduating with my BS mechanical engineering degree after 5 years with a full-time job. Congratulations, Eric. I'm so proud of you. Mechanical engineering is hard. It's also the same degree that Bill Nye has. So you're now as educated as Bill Nye. Congratulations. You're going to do great things. Just be like passionate. Like I am. We have Daniel, aka with the 5, says, thinking about Cyberpunk and cybernetics, have we seen any recent advancements in artificial myomers and musculature? So you're talking about artificial muscles, and I'm not super up on the research, but I know right now we've created artificial muscles in the lab that can be something like 100 times stronger than human muscles. So yeah, I'd say we're making a lot of, I saw a tiny, like a robot the size of a snail, like 5 of them, pulling a car. So that's pretty good. It's just a matter of implementing them in something that would be functioning like a limb and at the limb size, and you could attach it to your body, you know. Mikey O'World says, our bodies are constantly dying due to apoptosis. That's a scheduled suicide of a cell. Well, yeah, but it's also constantly being replenished. When you... Well, I was going to go into something about radiation sickness since we were mentioning it, but do you know why people's hair falls out and why they get so nauseated when you go through something like radiation therapy and chemotherapy? Is because you're specifically targeting fast-growing cells, because fast-growing cells are also what drives cancer, rapidly dividing cells. And so when you bombard those with radiation, they die. But these fast-growing cells are in your stomach lining. Your stomach lining is replaced like every day, and in your hair follicles, because your hair is constantly growing. So when those fast-growing cells get targeted indirectly by cancer treatments, that's why you have the nausea, and that's why your hair falls out. I don't think that's related to what you said. The more you know. Cancer edition. We have a couple more minutes. Just a couple more minutes for your questions and comments. Marcia says, what should I do to get fit? Should I diet or exercise or both? Both. Exercise will be how you get muscles and you increase the size of your muscles, but without diet, you will never see those muscles. It's a toning is a myth. you could do crunches every day, but if you don't have the weight loss and the diet support to actually see those brand new awesome abs, you're never going to see them. Like just doing a bunch of crunches, you're not going to lose belly fat. You need the constant change to your diet and your habits. And people wildly overestimate how many calories they burn during a workout. Like you could run a mile and then have that canceled out by drinking 1 Gatorade calorically. So if you're really trying to lose weight, get in shape, exercise is really important. But first, you need to change your diet, or else you're not gonna see any actual changes. And that's what you want, right? You want to see the changes, and just generally you'll get healthier. But the diet is much more of a it's a much bigger lever on your health, what you're eating. Exercise is great, but if what your body is using to grow itself is garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. That's what I said. Cody Nesbitt, I got it right this time. Can we get a quick explanation on how you became a host of Mythbusters? Yeah, so in 2016, I hosted the Search, Mythbusters The Search, searching for the next Mythbusters hosts. At that time in 2016, I had been writing a lot about Mythbusters. I've been writing a lot about Mythbusters, a lot of articles on Scientific American, on Nerdist, and everyone kind of knew, and I spoke about it publicly many, many times, that I was a Mythbusters super fan. And so in 2016, I just got a random email from the showrunner of Mythbusters, the original one, and he emailed me and he said, like, hey, we're doing this show. Would you want to do a sizzle or test out, do an audition? And things kind of went from there. And I had a fantastic time working with the actual old film crew from Mythbusters. They're all amazing people. It's a skeleton crew of total experts, total gems of human guys and gals, and I love working with them. You'd be hard pressed to find a film crew that's more professional and more efficient than them. They're great. And that's where I met Alan Pan also. He was a contestant on that show. So that was kind of my synthesis into Mythbusters canon. And after that, you know, I became friends with Adam Savage, and I've been forever kind of intertwined. And me and Adam have been waiting to do a collaboration since I launched, but since I launched right when the pandemic started, we haven't really had an opportunity to do that. But I text him sometimes. Hey, can you do this? Can we make this thing? It's like, sure. But then, you know. Andrew Wilson says, hey Kyle, recently went through some older episodes of the Command Zone and saw you talking about competitive EDH. What resources do you use when brewing? Well, there's something called the CEDH deck database. Ugh. And that has the current list and primers for all of the most popular and most successful competitive decks. I would start there. That's where you get a lot of bases for your builds, and there you'll find a lot of discords for those competitive decks too, and that helps a lot. For example, I'm in the competitive discord for the Selvala deck and the Najila deck, because those are my two EDH decks. Kyle, your UFO is bubbling. Oh, man. I didn't know I was so carbonated. As always, near the end of the stream, coming in clutch, as they always do, Music Central Piano 29 with the 5678. Simping for the Grant Imahara Foundation. Keep up the great work, Kyle. Been a while. Great topics, especially in Yuri Geller, who sucks. Those are my words, not theirs. Remember, if someone makes a claim, they must support it. If they ask you to disprove their claim, explain why that makes no sense or end the conversation. Stay safe. I was 2 weeks off, but now I'm back, and we'll be doing every week through the end of the year, and continuing, but through the end of this year, we'll be raising money for the Grant Imahara Steam Foundation through Super Chat, and this week, we'll be playing Cyberpunk, and we'll be releasing a Cyberpunk video that we did with my Razor Girl Thea, and we got some crazy footage, so I hope you enjoy that. Aria also, I gave her a loner body for that episode, so you'll see how jacked and cyberpunky she is. And next week, The Expanse comes out. We'll be doing an Expanse episode as well. As you know, it's my favorite sci-fi show, maybe of all time. It's close. But if you want to continue this conversation after this stream is over, this will be going up on YouTube. If you want to catch the remainder, you didn't join live, or you can join the facility. You could drape on a pristine egg white lab coat and join the facility staff at patreon.com/Kyle Hill. At a certain tier, you get our Discord where I chat. I mostly lurk, but I try to chat with my professors almost every day. And you get behind the scenes stuff, pictures, you get episodes early. Hopefully, the professors are going to be seeing that Cyberpunk episode tomorrow morning before all you. And we get up to a lot of nice stuff in this nice little community in a hermetically sealed facility somewhere. Thank you so much for watching this week. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you next week. And until then, be nice to each other, wear a mask, social distance. Don't go to your parents' house for Christmas if you can help it. Be smart about this. Because at the end of the day, this is all we got.